What's up, guys? Kelly McKay here, aka HVAC Millionaire, right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell, hit the like button, and leave me a comment below. Thank you for subscribing. I've got a lot of people who are subscribing all the time, and so I know a lot of times I don't do, maybe you guys have, but sometimes when I find somebody on YouTube, I don't always go back and like watch everything that they've produced. And I've been on YouTube for like 8 years. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Kelly McKay. In 1996, I got married and I went to work for my father-in-law. And I took one summer off. So I worked there for about 2 years. I started at like $8.25, worked there for 2 years. And then I decided to take a summer off. And the reason I decided to take a summer off is because I didn't think I liked the HVAC industry. You know, it was hard work. You're sweaty, you're on roofs, I was throwing up the ladder 6 times a day. Just didn't enjoy it. And so I took one summer off and went to work for Purina Mills that make the food. You know, they make all kinds of food. And so I drove a forklift loading grain trucks for one summer. And we dealt with all kinds of food, like monkey food, like all the local zoo would get their food from this warehouse. So we would load trucks with forklifts and we would stack it on these little bitty pallets. The pallets were literally only this big. And every time you turned a corner, if you turned it too sharp, if you didn't know what you were doing, like I didn't know what I was doing, the whole stack would tip over. So I spent the majority of that summer stacking food. You know, 50-pound bags, 25-pound bags, 15-pound bags, whatever, just stacking food. And then loading grain trucks. Well, every time you load a grain truck, your forks, you could pick up 2 pallets at a time because they were not very wide. And if the forks stuck out just a little bit, and so when you were loading a grain truck, if you accidentally stabbed a bag that had already been loaded, then you had to take those off, take that bag out, grab a new one, put it back in its place. And so it was just a nightmare. I was never very good at it. It was hot as hell in that warehouse because there was no air conditioning in there. And I just hated it. But the reason I took that job is because it was a pay raise. I went from $8.25 making $12.50 or something like that. And I thought, this is it. This is my ticket. You know, I'm going to make a lot more money for my family. But I hated it. So I went back to work for my father-in-law and I got a little raise. And now I was making like $9.50 an hour, $10 an hour. And eventually, I think I went to work, maybe when I came back, I'm not sure if I went to work back for him or for another company. I worked for another company for a while. One day I come to work for that company and find out they're closing the doors and I didn't have a job anymore. Turns out that they had done a big project well before my time coming into this business, coming into their company, and it didn't work out so well and they never fully recovered. So another great big company in the area bought them and took all of their employees. So I had an opportunity to go to work for them, but I wasn't licensed yet, and they were gonna make me do install, and I didn't wanna do install full time. I wanted to do service and get better at service. So went to work for a company that was actually closer to home, and they allowed me to run service even though I wasn't licensed. And then I eventually got my license, and they didn't want to give me enough money because when I worked for the other company, if you got licensed, you were worth $2 to $3 more an hour instantly. And this company didn't want to give me $2 to $3 more an hour. So I went to back to work for my father-in-law for a better pay. And I was doing install all day long, every day. And that's not what I really wanted to do. And I kept getting better and better offers from my service manager to go back to work for the other company for more money. So I did. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, was leaving my father-in-law for the second time. Very hard. And he let me know about it. And rightfully so. I can completely empathize with him and how that must have felt to him. And I still feel bad about it to this day. But I had to do what was necessary for his daughter, for our family, because when I went back, I was going to be able to get insurance. That was part of the deal. I was going to get insurance and higher pay. So I had to do it. My wife has a horrible back. She needed attention. She needed to see a doctor regularly. So I had to do it. And then I worked there for several years, and I wound up getting my journeyman's license, and I wound up getting my master's license eventually. And there was two things that happened that made me want to leave once I got my master's license. For one, the company I worked for did not have an active master's license. For whatever reason, the circumstances that happened, the person who held the master's license was no longer working there. And so once I got mine, I thought, oh, this is going to be cool. They can use mine, right? They can use my master's license. And they chose not to. They chose not to because I guess they had been put in a situation before with somebody else where they held that license, over their head as leverage, and this owner was not going to let that happen again. So back to empathizing, at the time I couldn't see that I didn't think that was relevant, and that was not my intention, was to leverage my license over somebody. I simply just thought, hey, it's cool. Now we have a license within the business, but that's just not how they saw it. So now looking back, I can completely understand. But back then I didn't. And I was a lot younger and a lot more immature. But they, two major things happened. For one, I got my license, I got a raise, and got put on salary. I was making the most money I've ever made. Still wasn't that much because this was 2006, 2007. And so the cost of living was a lot cheaper back then. So I got a little raise. I was doing okay. I wanted more responsibility. I started learning how to do bids and how to do heat loads and stuff like that so that I could earn more money. And one day, here's the first thing that happened. One day I'm in my truck and I get a phone call and it's the office and it's my boss. And they say, hey, I need a hot service igniter. Do you have one? I said, well, I got lots of them. Which one are you needing? Oh, it's a ring. Okay, cool. I've got plenty of those. I'll swing by the office on my way to my next call. So I stop in and they come out to meet me when I pull into the driveway at the shop, and they come running out holding a flame sensor. And it really bothered me that this person did not know what I did day in and day out. Despite me offering multiple times, just come ride with me for a day. Just come ride with me for a day so you get a taste of what service is. What we have to do when we're out here on the job. Never took me up on the offer because, I'll tell you this, because it was a husband and wife and they had gotten divorced and the wife kept the business. The husband knew very well what went into service and what happened. The wife did not and chose not to learn. And so that really bugged me. And then the next thing that happened a few months later is I needed new business cards. And so at that point, I was the go-to person for service. If anybody had a technical question, it came to me. Hell, if anybody had an install question, it would come to me. Like, a lot of stuff came to me because I had the most knowledge in the company at that time. And what happened was I get told that, hey, your business cards are done, so the next time you're in that area, you're welcome to pick them up. Just swing into this location right here and go pick them up. I said, cool. So the next time, a week later, I happen to be in that area, and I swing in, I get my business cards, and it says HVAC service technician. And at this time, I was a go-to person for all technical stuff. And in the past, I had worked for a service manager. I wanted that title, and I thought that I deserved that title because I had a lot of experience at this point. I had been in the business for almost 12 years, primarily doing service. I knew how to do install as well, but I was primarily doing service. So at that point, I decided that this is not for me. I want more in my life. Like, I had already begun searching. I had already begun, trying to figure out how can I make more money. And I'll tell you, it wasn't that I wasn't making enough money, it's that I wasn't managing my money properly. But I didn't learn that till later. I continued to not manage my money properly for many years after that. So then I started my business. I had to get I told my friends and family, only my very closest friends and family, that I'm going to do this. And my dad one day just shows up with a check for $10,000, a cashier's check. See, my grandpa had passed away, and his siblings had sold the house, my grandpa's house, and split up the money. I have no idea how much money my dad got, but 10,000 of that, he wrote a check over to me. And when he handed me that check, he said, I just want you to have the chance. 4 months later, my dad dies. From the time that I started the business till my dad dying, my mom had called me while I was actually on a service call. I remember it vividly. I was doing a service call for an electrician contractor that was kind enough to give me a chance, give my new business a chance and let me do some work for him. And my mom calls me, and I know that something's wrong. I can just hear it in her voice. So I ask her, what's wrong? She says, my cancer's come back. And so that began the entire battle with my mom fighting cancer again. She had survived cancer when I was in high school, breast cancer. This time it came back and it metastasized. Took them about a year to find it, but it metastasized on her spine. And so after so many treatments and stuff, they finally figured out where it was and did the best they could, to keep her healthy as they could. But there was a lot of physical complications, medical complications. For the next 2 years, I think it was, she was in and out of the hospital the whole time. And thankfully, with my business, it allowed me the opportunity to be able to stop in and visit my mom every day. So I'm really grateful for that time. And then eventually it got to the point where they couldn't do anything else for my mom. I mean, after she had a blood clot and all kinds of stuff, man. I mean, she was in outer space for a month after that blood clot. It passed through her lungs and went to her brain. But she came back out of it. She came back out of it and was normal again. But eventually she lost her battle. And, I feel like with life, it's always like a balancing thing happening. One thing that I failed to mention during this time is that my wife has chronic pain and has to take substances to keep this chronic pain under control. Otherwise, we are in the emergency room. Her back is horrible. And it's so risky to do surgery, so she's opted not to do surgery. She's read all about it, and the chances of getting better are slim, and so the particular medicines that she was taking at that time had horrible side effects. And so during the time between my dad dying and my mom dying, we had this, it came to a head. And when that happened, from that point on, that was so hard, but from that point on, she's been on a great path and she's doing excellent. And we somehow made it through all that. Because this has been 3 years leading up to this thing that happened, I'm not even going to talk about that, but I almost lost my wife. She almost died. So lost my mom, lost my dad. I'm an only child, raised an only child. I have 2 stepsisters and a stepmom. And mom dies, dad dies, my wife almost dies. And somehow I get into IRS trouble. The IRS is breathing down my neck because I'm not filing taxes properly. I have no idea what I'm doing as a business owner. I'm working 24/7. I cannot get a break. I don't know what to do. But somehow I found a couple of people and I found a couple of books. And it pulled me out of this. And I was able to start changing the way I thought about my business and changing the way I was able to shed the guilt, because I realized that I have to charge a certain amount. I have to do things a certain way. I have to offer options a certain way. I have to charge a certain amount. We need to look a certain way. We need to talk a certain way. And I started getting, I didn't feel confident when I started all of this stuff. But I just decided to give it a try. And then what do you know? Somebody said yes to one of my options. And that was where everything started to change. I started hiring people, started buying more vehicles, started making some money. I was able to pay the IRS back. That's a whole nother story. But all of this happened within the first 5 years of business. It was rough. I'm shocked when I look back today and think that I actually made it. But I never gave up. And one of the reasons that I never gave up is because my dad told me, I just want you to have a chance. Well, I wasn't about to waste that chance. So I'm sure there's somebody you're fighting for in your business. I'm sure there's There's something that drives you to get up every morning to go take care of your customers, even if the results aren't showing up for you. And that's why I've transitioned. You know, I wound up selling my business last year. It just kind of fell in my lap. I did plan to exit at some point in my career, and I had actually started planning for it. But it just fell in my lap, and I took it. For 2 to 3 years before this happened and I exited my business, I started coaching, consulting, course creating to help other business owners who might be like me, who was stuck, who didn't know what to do, could not see the light at the end of the tunnel, debt piling up. The more work I did, the more debt it seemed to put me in. And eventually I was able to get out of that. And I know what I did to get out of that. And so I want to help other people get out of that. I want to help you get to $2 or $3 million in revenue if that's what you choose. If you don't choose that, then I want to at least get it to where you're not trading all your time for money, and the time that you do trade, you have something to show for it. Like summer after summer after summer would come, like the harvest season. And by November, we didn't have any money. And then I'd go through 4 months of just paying, scraping by, trying to figure out how we're going to pay all our bills and pay payroll and all this stuff. And it doesn't have to be that way. There is an easier way, and I found it. And that's what I share with people in my coaching and the course creating and all that stuff. And I'm going to share that stuff with you guys in the challenge that we're doing on the 25th this month. 25th through the 29th, 5 days. It's $47. Took me years to figure this stuff out. Took me hundreds of hours of study and practice to be able to just share it in a way that makes sense. And it's how I formulate it in my mind to make sense. So very basic, very simple, very easy to understand, very easy to implement, and it can completely change your business, change your life, like it did mine. I want to share that with you. So I hope you'll join us on the challenge next month. For those of you who aren't familiar with my story, hopefully if there's any part of that story that you can relate to, one of the things that I will tell you is it wasn't all me. Like, I had some good team members that happened to join me along the way that helped me tremendously. So there are good people out there that might just join your team, depending on how you go about it and all those things. But join us on the challenge. Let me share with you what I learned for myself to help me get out of that place, to eventually exiting my business and, having money, having time and freedom, and now getting to do what I truly love, which is coaching and consulting. This is what I love doing. I love course creating. I love shooting videos like this for you guys. And now I get to spend my time doing that. But this didn't just happen by chance. It was by design. Did I get lucky a few times? Sure. I'm going to say, yeah, possibly. But I love what Tony Robbins says about luck. He says it's labor under correct knowledge. When you have the correct knowledge and you put in the work, you get lucky. A lot more lucky than maybe what you're used to. So if you want to join us, great. If not, cool. But I love you guys anyways. Hope that we can at least be friends, whether you join the challenge or not. If you're ready to just go straight into coaching and consulting, I'll leave that link in the description as well as the challenge description. But at least take the chance, take the opportunity, and invest the $47 to join the challenge at the end of this month. You're not going to be sorry that you did it. You are going to learn some stuff that you can take immediately into your business and implement. So things can start to change in your favor. You can get favorable results as soon as you do these things. So, love you guys. Go make money. Boom.